One of the most popular and beloved stars of the 1980s, Омельянчик Оксana Alexandrovna personified the originality and creativity that made Soviet gymnastics so exciting. Time and time again, she charmed audiences around the world with her whimsical dance, magnetic charisma, and sublime expression. Today we take a look at Oksana's legacy, her innovative skills, and what has made her such an enduring fan favorite, even in the decades since her retirement. Oksana was born January 2, 1970, in Ulan-Ude in the Soviet Far East. Her father was in the army, and by the age of 2, the family had relocated to Kyiv in the Ukrainian SSR. She began figure skating at the age of 5 and later took up gymnastics as well. She did both sports for a while before ultimately choosing the latter, as, to quote Oksana, "Gymnastics won my heart." In 1983, she competed in one of the most prestigious junior meets at the Junior Friendship Tournament in Druzhba. Oksana finished 4th in the all-around and tied for gold on bars and floor exercise. The following year, she was named alternate to the would-be Olympic team that instead competed in Olomouc due to the Soviet boycott of the 1984 Los Angeles Games. In 1985, she won the all-around at Soviet Nationals and then made her international senior debut at the European Championships in Helsinki. She had incredible success there, finishing 3rd in both the all-around and on bars. She was 2nd on floor, where I want to point out her first of many creative additions to the sport. For her middle run, Oksana did a double full immediate punch front and started tumbling back in the direction from which she had started, culminating in a 1.5 twisting dive roll. She was the first to perform a double full punch front, as well as this phenomenon which would become known as back-to-back tumbling. This would later be shown by Soviet teammates Svetlana Bayitova, Natalia Lassionova, and Tatiana Lisinka, Romanians Daniela Silivash and Aurelia Dobre, Bulgarian Silvia Mitova, American Dominique Dawes, and many others. Oksana also won the 1985 European Balance Beam title for her incredible and innovative routine. She always worked beam on releve and with a smile. Here, she performed a very original combination of 2 forward rolls into a courbet. Another unique and creative skill was a full turn on her knee. She also was one of the first gymnasts to follow in the footsteps of American Michel Dussert and attempt a triple twist off beam, a dismount which is still incredibly difficult in the year of our Aliyah 2024. Oksana's strong results that season continued, and she would go on to make the Soviet World Team in Montreal that fall. Although she originally did not qualify for the all-around final due to a fall on bars during optionals, she was later substituted in for her teammate Olga Mastepanova. In perhaps the pinnacle of her career, Oksana would wind up tying for the world all-around title alongside another teammate who had been subbed in, the late great Yelena Shushinova. Also at Montreal Worlds, Oksana showed a dazzling bars routine that included an exciting combination of a Delchev to a tucked back somersault between the bars, basically a tucked pack salto. To my knowledge, she was the first to perform this transition, which would later be adopted by fellow Soviet great Svetlana Bayitova.
Beautiful line with the body. Look at the full twist, flying over the bottom bar. It's like a monkey on poles.
In addition, Oksana showed more upgrades on floor exercise during these World Championships. She did an immediate back handspring step out of her piked full-in mount, and then a back handspring layout step out of her double pike dismount. Again, I don't recall seeing anyone do this before. These interesting accoutrements led to her winning the world floor title to accompany the gold medal she'd already won in the all-around. In 1986, Oksana competed in arguably the 2 most prestigious meets of the year, the inaugural Goodwill Games, held in Moscow in July, and the Quadrennial World Cup, which took place in Beijing over 3 days in August and September. At the Goodwill Games, the Soviets dominated in front of a home crowd. They swept the all-around podium, with Oksana winning bronze behind Vera Kolesnikova and Yelena Shushinova. They would also secure the top 2 spots in all 4 event finals, with Oksana taking home silver on floor. On beam at the Goodwill Games, Oksana introduced her first skill to officially be named for her in the Code of Points. In the 1989 Code of Points, the first code after its inception, it is described as a flick-flack with a quarter turn, 90 degrees, to side handstand. Unfortunately, this is not an accurate representation of the skill Oksana performed. In actuality, she did more of a back dive with a 3/4 turn to a hip circle around the balance beam, and never finished in handstand. This skill would only become more convoluted in the ensuing decades, and it is described in the current code as a flick-flack with 3/4 turn, 270 degrees, to side handstand for 2 seconds with optional in position. One performed the skill as Oksana did, and it's a shame it wasn't properly described in the code. But this is the FIG, and let's be real, are we at all surprised? A little over a month following the Goodwill Games, Oksana earned more accolades at the prestigious World Cup, where she astonishingly medaled in all 5 individual events. She again won bronze in the all-around, this time behind Yelena Shushanova and Daniela Silivas, as well as on floor. She won silver on vault and bars, and she was again victorious on beam, adding another gold medal to her already resplendently opulent trophy case. Oksana had an incredibly long season in 1986, competing all the way until December, where she took part in the Craft International in London. Sadly, she injured her ankle during training and was thus unable to compete in the all-around. She scratched vault, competed bars and beam, and did an exhibition on floor. Despite this, she did qualify into beam finals with the top score while introducing yet another original skill, this time a mount. She did a round-off onto the springboard, moving up to the beam with a back handspring with a 3/4 turn. As far as I'm aware, this is the only time she competed it, as she would go back to her old mount of a forward walkover in event finals, where she walked away with yet another beam title. This mount would later be named, and unnamed, for Italian Patrizia Lucconi, who successfully performed it at the 1988 Olympics. Patrizia did it better than Oksana, but I was completely oblivious that Oksana had ever even attempted this mount prior to last year. The year of 1987 would prove to be a pivotal one in the career of Omelianchik. She started the year only finishing 6th at the USSR Championships, thus not being named to the 3-person European team. With so much depth in the Soviet Union and younger gymnasts constantly nipping at her heels, she definitely was not guaranteed a spot on the team to defend her world titles that October. Typically, when it came to determining Soviet teams, results of national competitions did not hold the most weight. More than anything, the coaches needed to ensure results, and that often meant choosing the best team as close as possible to the competition. However, under the leadership of Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet Union was going through revolutionary changes known as glasnost and perestroika. Glasnost, in particular, meant greater openness and transparency in all facets of life in the Soviet Union. For basically the first time since the creation of the state, criticism of the government by the press was allowed. Additionally, the Soviet people finally were allowed to know about past and present decisions of their government without the tint of the heavy propaganda that had always existed. This emphasis on greater individual freedom trickled down to all parts of society, including at Round Lake. For the first time, the Soviet World Team would be determined strictly by the all-around results from the USSR Cup, which was held well over a month prior to the Rotterdam Worlds. Oksana redeemed herself, finishing 3rd all-around, and thus earning a spot on the team. Ironically, this method of team selection would wind up being both the first and the last for the Soviets. They had a disappointing and disastrous result in Rotterdam, finishing 2nd to Romania in the team competition, and thus losing the world title they'd had a stranglehold on for decades. They had only lost the world team title twice in the prior 33 years since entering the sport in 1952. To add insult to injury, this was their 2nd loss to Romania, coming 8 years after their 2nd place finish in Fort Worth at the '79 Worlds. Sadly for Oksana, she was one of the members who faltered the most during team optionals, making mistakes on both floor and beam. Her performance on beam was especially costly. She only received a 9.7, which was pretty generous considering she had a break at the waist and had to touch the beam. Nonetheless, this was a low score for this competition, and the Soviets would have to count it due to Tatiana Chujikova falling earlier in the rotation. On floor, it was her trademark middle pass where she faltered, only scoring a 9.550. And as one of the most experienced veterans on the team, these errors likely were not held in her favor. Yet despite this mistake, she again introduced a new combination on floor with her mount, a triple twist immediate punch front. Rebounding forward out of difficult backward tumbling skills was a fairly new phenomenon, most notably associated with Romania's Camelia Vonier, who had performed a punch front out of both a full-in and a double layout, the latter to which she had achieved great success at these very worlds. However, Oksana was the first to perform it out of a triple twist. In Rotterdam, Oksana did not qualify for any event finals, but she did advance to the all-around final. She again was shaky and came up quite short in defending her title, finishing in 5th place behind both of her teammates, Shushinova and Baitova. In spite of these disappointments, there was one major highlight for Oksana's legacy at these Worlds. She originated an entirely new vault entry, a round off onto the springboard, and then a half turn onto the horse, which she used to catapult into a front pike in the post flight. This entry would prove to be just as revolutionary as the regular Yurchenko entry had been back in 1982. To this very day, it is used by countless gymnasts, including Rebecca Andrade and Simone Biles, the gold and silver medalists on vaulting from the most recent World Championships. Oksana's eponymous vault is still occasionally seen in NCAA competition, where it has a 10.0 start value. Of all the incredible contributions and innovative skills Oksana showed in her gymnastics career, the entry for her vault is undoubtedly the most enduring. Oksana carried on into 1988, which was the big Olympic year. Having served as the alternate for the 1984 Soviet team, Oksana desperately hoped to make the competing team for the Games in Seoul that September. In April, she competed in the USA versus USSR meet, tying for 3rd all-around and taking her new floor mount one step further. She performed a triple full, immediate punch front 1 1/4, a very difficult and original combination. Also in April, Oksana finished 4th at USSR Nationals, keeping herself in conversation for the Olympic team. However, a few months later, at the final domestic competition prior to Seoul, the USSR Cup in August, she finished in 8th place. In a bittersweet twist of fate, she would finally achieve her dream of making it to the Olympics, but for the 2nd Olympic year in a row, she was named first alternate. Although devastating for Oksana and her many fans, I do believe the coaches made the correct decision. The '88 Soviet team was a very strong one, and they avenged their loss to the Romanians the prior year in grand fashion, winning their 9th consecutive Olympic team gold medal in a games in which they had participated. Throughout the competition, you can see Oksana down on the floor, happy and supportive of her teammates. 3 years prior, she and Yelena Shushinova had shared the sport's biggest prize on its biggest stage. In Seoul, it would be Yelena alone coming up victorious, with Oksana in the shadows, cheering for and congratulating her dear friend. Much to my surprise, I only discovered in researching this video that Oksana competed past 1988. She participated in the 1989 USSR Cup event finals and finished 2nd on floor. She retired not long after, married and divorced Biz Moffitt, who then married Aurelia Dobre, got remarried and had 2 children. She has coached, done choreography, and been a judge at major international competitions representing Ukraine. She is currently the head of the Ukrainian Women's Technical Committee. Oksana is the personification of a human treasure. Her love for gymnastics emanated in all that she did, every swing on the bars, every movement in her dance, and with every gloriously magical moment on beam. She and her coach Tatiana Pirskaya created some of the most exciting, daring, and interesting routines of the mid to late 80s. Her legacy and footprint in the sport will never be forgotten. She was deservedly inducted into the International Gymnastics Hall of Fame last year, and her gratitude and appreciation during her speech was extremely heartfelt and moving. Her incredible achievements and dedication to the sport will always be cherished. What an amazing champion. So I just want to give a huge thanks to everybody watching this video. It was a huge labor of love. I hope to not keep you waiting another 2 years for the next installment in this series. I must give a shout out to my Ilianka tier patrons, Mike B, Sidoni Sarah, and Slobodan. Thank you so much for all the support you've given to my channel. I appreciate it so much. I will see all of you guys in my next one. Take care. Da Skorova. Bye, loves.